Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So here we are starting with the news analysis video for 7th of October. So first important topic is the Supreme Court. It refuses to stay the release of Bihar caste survey data. So this is a step in towards transparency of data. So top court refuses to order status quo even as the petitioners they flag that data जो था वो unlawfully collect किया गया है. This is what is the concern of the petitioners. So despite that, Supreme Court ने बोला है कि basically you need to make this data transparent, you need to release this data. So Supreme Court dismisses the notion कि जो compilation of data किया गया जिस भी तरीके से किया गया वो एक separate चीज है, and if the data is published so it is not going to affect the privacy. So state told to file its response. So herein Justice Sanjeev Khanna who said that you cannot stop a state government or any government from taking a decision. Yes, if there is an issue with regard to the data, that will be considered. So आप state governments को stop नहीं कर सकते हो in carrying out this caste surveys, but if there is a problem जिस तरीके से वो किया गया, so that would be definitely taken under consideration and that needs to be in a constitutional manner. So it becomes important जब हम data transparency की बात करते हैं तो at the same time data transparency versus data privacy. This is you can say two problems at the same time and how we are going to balance them. Apart from this, it is important कि जो भी data collect किया गया है survey में क्या outcomes रहे, that needs to be made transparent so as to ensure कि again वो data misuse भी ना किया जाए even politically. Talking about the Nobel Peace Prize 2023 goes to jailed Iranian activist Nargis Mohammadi. So, imprisoned Iranian activist, she won the Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of her tireless campaigning for the women's rights and democracy and against the death penalty. So victory is near. She said that I also hope this recognition makes Iranians protesting for the change stronger and more organized. So Iran, we are basically seeing human rights being violated, and she is 19th woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize and the second Iranian woman after human rights activist Shireen Ebadi won the award in 2003. So Mohammad Nasheed, who is Maldives speaker, says कि जो new Maldives president अभी recently elect हुए, he won't be anti-India or pro-China. So कुछ apprehensions थे, it was being said कि definitely जो newly elected president है, उन्हीं के words अगर हम बोले, so he said कि I would be fulfilling my promise of ensuring कि Indian जो security forces stationed है, but again that is not for the security reasons or because of any security crisis in Maldives. That is for the economic reasons, for the ensuring safety of the project that is being constructed in Maldives by India. So he promised the people that if he gets elected, he'll ensure that Indian security forces would be sent back. So उससे regarding हमारे कुछ concerns थे, but India के अगर हम stand की बात करें तो we said कि we will maintain a wait and watch situation and will monitor क्या changes किए जा रहे हैं by the newly elected Maldives government. So here in the Mohammed Nasheed, he says that international media has characterized our elections between India and China and also has characterized Dr. Muzi as pro-China. So I don't think all this was exactly true. So it all depends upon how basically now policies would be formed and what changes would be done by him. So again, India is maintaining a wait and watch situation, monitoring what changes are being done. So the problem of landfill sites definitely leads to ground pollution, leads to air pollution, and apart from this, the human habitations around it definitely impacts the health of the human lives also. And when we talk about what is the solution to this, so one of the most and sustainable solution can be constructing engineered landfill sites So the process of hiring 2 more agencies to expedite this work is facing a delay because of the non-formation of the MCD Standing Committee due to a pending case in the apex court. So right now अभी जो actions लिए जा रहे हैं, that is so it is being ensured कि जो भी waste it is there, it is being shifted, and we can definitely use it even in waste to energy plants. तो उसमें जो जिस type का waste चाहिए एक वो specificity आ जाती है. You can't use any type of waste when we talk about waste to energy plants. So जो भलसवा साइट है, गाजीपुर साइट है, उनको क्लियर करने के ऑर्डर्स दिए गए हैं, बट दीज आर सम शॉर्ट टर्म एंड टेम्पररी मेजर्स जो जहाँ पे अगेन थोड़ा डीले देखने को मिल रहा है. So when we talk about the tax revenue trends, so let's try to understand the newly emerging trend. So amid the broadly healthy GST inflows, some trends near greater scrutiny. So let's understand halfway through the financial year, India's gross revenues from the GST stands at over rupees 9.92 lakh crores, which makes 11% increase over the collections between April and September during 2022. So GST collections we are seeing a growth of 11% on year basis. So that is one of the positives. And average monthly revenues जो है 2023-24 के they are healthy at rupees 1,65,418 crores. With 4 of the 6 occasions we saw कि GST kitty it has even crossed rupees 1.6 lakh crores of revenue. Monthly revenue हम बात कर रहे हैं. So 3 बार ऐसा हुआ है कि this figure has been crossed. So GST is performing nicely, and we are not having any major concern when it comes to the GST revenues that are being collected. So the government appears comfortably placed under regarding the GST revenues in this fiscal context. So with the room to spare for some moderation in the inflows during the January to March 2024 quarter. So एक ये चीज है. Apart from this, अगर suppose किसी और area में we are seeing कि tax revenue slow down हो रहे हैं, तो again we can expect GST to compensate that thing. So beyond the macro resilience that these numbers they are indicating, definitely few areas they are like that they deserve closer scrutiny from the policymakers and the GST Council, which convenes today. So GST Council meeting that is going to happen. So it's important कि कौन से issues लिए जाएंगे, discuss किए जाएंगे. So one, there is discernible slowdown in the growth of the GST inflows. So growth of GST inflows की बात करें तो वहाँ पे थोड़ा हमें slowdown देखने को मिल रहा है on monthly basis, as we saw कि it dropped to 10% in September, which was the slowest uptick since July 2021. And growth from the domestic transactions and the services imports, even that is also slowed down to 14% over the past 2 months from 18% in the month of June. So it's important to note कि जो revenues in September में these are based on the transactions which were undertaken in August. So also include the pending dues from the businesses since the start of the GST regime in 2017-18 as a deadline to remit them was September 30. और बात करें e-invoicing की, that became mandatory for all the firms with a turnover of rupees 5 crores since August 1. So there was another compliance push at the work. So because of this, again, we can expect the GST revenues going up. At the same time, when we talk about consumption, because GST is an indirect tax, and if consumption goes up, so definitely we can expect the GST revenues to also increase. So e-way bills की अगर हम बात करें, around 9.34 crores e-way bills they were generated during August. They did not translate into the highest ever revenue. So it may suggest कि जो transaction sizes हैं, they have shrunk. For instance, like number of e-way bills के basis पे we can directly say or we can directly expect कि GST revenue for short would be increasing, because e-way bills, it depends upon कि amount क्या है e-way bills का. So with again short term slowdown we can expect कि जो GST e-way bills generate किए गए उनका amount reduce हो गया, because despite 9.34 crore e-way bills being generated, we did not see highest ever GST revenue. So that can be mainly because of this one reason कि जो transaction size था वो reduce हुआ हो सकता है. और एक और puzzling trend जो है, that is seen in the revenues from the goods imports that have also shrunk 4 times this year. So of course जो lower goods import bills था, they were recorded this year, it reflects in lower GST intakes. So even goods import के अगर हम यहाँ पे भी बात करें तो यहाँ पे भी जो amount था, amount of import bills, that saw a reduction. But at the same time, imports hit a 9-month high of $58.6 billion in the month of August and 10.75% over July period. So yet जो revenues collect किए गए September में, they were only 5.7% below the previous month's kitty. So this does not add up. Basically अगर GST, अगर हम amount की भी बात करें तो goods import that is increasing, but वो translate नहीं हो रहा है in terms of GST revenue. So this does not add up, and authorities, they must dig deeper to check for the revenue leakage from the imports. So definitely अगर चीजें translate नहीं हो रही है, proportionately they are not increasing in terms of GST revenue despite increase in the goods imports. So it means कि कहीं ना कहीं revenue leakage हो रहा है, and we need to identify that and plug it. So aligning higher education with the United Nations SDGs. अब हम क्या changes कर सकते हैं higher education की अगर हम बात करें, specifically जो हमारी National Education Policy 2020, that also needs to be aligned in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals. So yes, recent actions policies वो indicate कर रहे हैं कि India is committed towards realizing the SDGs. SDG 4 है जो, it pertains to access to quality education. So it's prerequisite for the achievement of other goals as well. And India, with a long-standing history of equitable and inclusive education, we have accelerated efforts to ensure the achievement of SDGs through various reforms as well. And definitely इसमें सबसे important reform की अगर हम बात करें तो that is National Education Policy 2020. So that should be again given credit to a greater extent. So we have prepared this policy in tune with most of the SDGs, like it calls for changes at all the levels of education, but we need to give priority to higher education as it accelerates social mobility. It empowers the people through creativity and critical thinking and grants them employment skills as well. So according to data from the OECD, जो लोगों के पास higher education degree होती है, they are more employable and they can earn an average of 54% more than those who only have completed the senior secondary education. So that's well understood. So university inclusive education की हम बात करें, thus it better protects the people against poverty also. It prevents them from hunger, supports them for good health and well-being, and promotes gender equality. It provides more decent work, which in turn drives the economic growth, and it reduces inequalities. So that's how you can, understand कि कैसे national education policy, it is aligned with all these SDGs. So that is a basically linkage. Now it's important key that gets translated in terms of all these goals and ensure key they are fulfilled as far as higher education is concerned. More specifically, higher education, but entire education system at all the levels is important. So some suggestions include and concluding remarks have been mentioned. So let's just go through them as well. So NEP 2020 demands जो India का higher education system, it needs to be committed to mapping its day-to-day operations with SDGs. मतलब day-to-day progress and changes, achievements जो भी हो रही हैं, it's important to map them, identify them, and monitor them. So ranking the universities according to their achievement of SDGs, that is also a welcome move. So it's still inadequate to meet the SDG deadline. So merely again, we can't say that this is going to be sufficient to meet the SDG deadline. We're just talking in the context of education, but yes, this is going to be a very significant reform. Then to accelerate the progress towards achieving the 2030 agenda, stakeholders of the higher education, they should be educated and oriented so that none of their activities leave any SG behind. So herein we can talk about even making aware the stakeholders of the higher education, how important it is to meet the SDGs on time. So even we can go ahead with a cooperation between different education institutions and universities in India. So universities, they should come out reinvigorated and play a part in the education, innovation, culture, and civic life of the local communities. So even, how we can ensure we are seeing the increase in number of the non-communicable diseases. So here and definitely higher education system can play a very important role in order to firstly deal with them, in order to even prevent them by accordingly influencing the behavior of the students in order to, better make them aware about how they need to, basically go ahead with the food choices or even the lifestyle choices, I should say. So they can play an important role in community health and energy saving measures, efficient resource allocation, waste reduction, development of the local skills, as well as the sharing of services, infrastructure, and facilities. So it's high time universities adopted a sustainability as a mantra and incorporated SDGs into their institutional strategies, both in daily administration, in teaching, and in research as well. So freebies before the election, Supreme Court seeks a response from Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh on this. So Supreme Court sought a response from the states of MP and Rajasthan on a plea that public funds, they are being misused to offer irrational freebies ahead of the elections. So because of the populist measures, and definitely this gets influenced with the politics. So this has been basically identified, and definitely Supreme Court is holding accountable the governments of Rajasthan and MP for this thing. So notices have been issued to the center, the Election Commission, and the Reserve Bank of India on the PIL, which also alleged key taxpayers' monies, they are being misused by two state governments to lure the voters. So Supreme Court basically, we saw CGI, he raised one question ki before elections, all kinds of promises they are made. That's very clear and everyone knows about them. So can can the courts control those promises or not? So this was a question. So petitioner has argued that the distribution of the irrational freebies using money from the consolidated funds before the elections to lure the voters, it was analogous to the offense of bribery and undue influence under section 171B and 171C of the IPC. So petitioners, again, they demanded this thing, we need to have a comprehensive guidelines on the announcement which is made by the chief ministers ahead of the elections. So we can have this thing again, we can have this at a generalized level, at the pan-India level for all kinds of even state assembly elections and then even for the general elections also. There needs to be a proper guideline that needs to be adhered to when it comes to announcing populist measures before the elections. So this can be one of the things of tackling this freebies or the Revdi culture. So the petitioner said that Madhya Pradesh government's financial condition was bad and nothing is more atrocious than permitting the government to distribute the cash mere months before the election. So the ultimate burden is on the taxpayers of this country. So Dr. M.S. Swaminathan's contributions will continue to inspire and guide us. So it's important to understand how basically he contributed to India's growth. So definitely all of us know about his contribution of green revolution and definitely in other areas of agriculture as well. So let's spot and try to learn from his life and contribution. So Professor Swaminathan loved India and wanted our nation, farmers in particular, to lead a life of prosperity. He could have chosen any career, but he was so impacted by the Bengal famine of 1943 that he was clear that if there is one thing he would do, it would be to study agriculture. So basically, that's how he decided to enter the field of agriculture after the Bengal famine of 1943. So, relatively young age, he came in contact with Dr. Norman Borlaug and followed his work in great detail. So 1950s May, he was offered a faculty position in the US, but he rejected that because he wanted to work in India and for India. So you can understand from his dedication, he despite again he could have lived an easy life in USA, but despite that, jo challenges say India mein and the decision that it took, he would be studying, he would be contributing in the agriculture sector. He stayed true with that, and definitely he moved in that direction. He wanted to work in India and for India. So that's how even his life story can even impact us also and impact our decisions also when it comes to we always most of specifically today's generation, they aspire to move out of India with the understanding or with the assumptions that there's an easy and there's much they can get much more high quality of life if they move out of India. But it's important for them to realize that their contributions needs to be done for India's economic growth. So that's there. And then Prime Minister says that I want you all to think about the challenging circumstances in which he stood as a callous, guiding our nation towards the path of self-sufficiency and self-confidence. So in the first 2 decades, agar hum independence ke baad ki baat kare, so we were dealing with immense challenges. We were dealing with food shortages, and definitely at that point of time, there was situation of food insecurity. Famines over it at the same time, so health condition also not so good. So early 1960s, India was grappling with the ominous shadows of famine also. And at that point of time, Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, his unyielding commitment and his foresight assured a new era of agricultural prosperity. With that, during the late 1960s, we saw the beginning of Green Revolution in India, and specific sectors like feed breeding, it led to significant increase in the wheat production. So that turned India from food deficient country into a self-sufficient nation, because at that point of time, we were importing the food grains from USA under the PL 480 program, and even the quality of the food grains that we were importing, that were not up to the market, that was not as per the expectations. So we were again suffering from all these problems or challenges as well. But at that point of time, we had no other option apart from importing. So his contributions turned India from a food deficient country into a food surplus nation. So that's why he is called as the father of India's green revolution. Then in terms of research and development, the Green Revolution offered a glimpse of India's can-do spirit. And that if we have a billion challenges, we also have a billion minds with the flame of innovation to overcome those challenges. So 5 decades after the Green Revolution began, Indian agriculture has become far more modern and progressive. But the very foundations that were laid by Professor Swaminathan, they can never be forgotten. Then apart from this, future years may he worked in areas like combating the parasites affecting the potato crops. His research also enabled the potato crops to withstand the cold weather. And today the world is talking about millets or Sri Anna as superfood. But Professor Swaminathan, he had encouraged the discourse around the millet since 1990. So it is not right now we are seeing millets being promoted, being talked about so much. But Professor Swaminathan, he has been encouraging, he's been taking efforts to promote and encourage millets consumption, millets cultivation since 1990. So basically, he was so forward looking. He was so, again, ahead of the times that from 1990s, he knows the importance of millets wheat consumption or for the cultivation. And that's definitely going to even benefit the farmers as well. Then we saw progress in terms of the soil health card initiatives being announced, and which has enabled us to understand our soil better and then address the problems accordingly. So even in this scheme also, Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, he played an important role, and Prime Minister acknowledges that it is at this point of time when he met Professor Swaminathan. So he appreciated the scheme and also shared his valuable inputs for the same. And apart from this, our interactions continue during even when our prime minister was the chief minister, during his chief ministerial tenure, and also when he took over as the prime minister. Apart from this, so the curul, it describes the farmers as a pin that holds the world together because it is the farmers who sustain everyone. So a lot of people call him as Krishi Vigyanik, an agricultural scientist. So even like Prime Minister says that I believe that he was even more. He was like more than a Krishi Vigyanik. He was a true Kisan Vigyanik, farmer scientist, not an agricultural scientist. So he definitely took the measures. He understood them. He again his research and development was again in this direction. How farmers' interest, how farmers' lifestyle, and all of that can be ensured, and growth can be ensured. So basically, all his work, it narrowed down the gap that existed between scientific knowledge and its practical application. So he made things more practical. He's consistently advocated for sustainable agriculture. So he always focused upon sustainable agriculture. हम कैसे promote कर सकते हैं? He emphasized the delicate balance between human advancement and the ecological sustainability. Then, apart from this, he laid special emphasis on improving the lives of the small farmers, ensuring that they also enjoy the fruits of innovation. So, he was again very passionate about improving the lives of women farmers also. So, you can note down sustainable agriculture, human development, ecological sustainability, में balance maintain करना, improving the lives of small farmers, how we can improve the lives of women farmers. So, 1987 में he was awarded with the World Food Prize, and he was the first recipient of this prestigious honor. He used his prize money to establish a not-for-profit research foundation. So you can see his dedication कि वो money भी उन्होंने agricultural growth and development के लिए invest किया. So it's important that we need to take his ideas forward. So no high court should deny video conferencing or hybrid hearings. This is what being put up by the Supreme Court. Technology is no longer a matter of choice. To be a judge, learn to use the technology. So when we talk about e-courts or even video conferencing or online hearings, so this is what even RCJ says, that technology use karna is no more a choice. It has become an important part of our lives, be it justice delivery system also. तो इसके लिए भी एक स्पेशल स्टैंडर्ड ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर फॉर वीडियो कॉन्फ्रेंसिंग हाइब्रिड मोड के लिए भी रिलीज किया जाएगा. दैट अगेन नीड्स टू बी फॉलोड बाय ऑल द कोर्ट्स, एंड that's how we are again promoting how technology can be leveraged when it comes to justice delivery, and promoting more transparency, promoting justice delivery more, making it more affordable. That's important. So agriculture sector में inequality को address करने के लिए recently there was a conference by the International Agricultural Research and the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. So this was again discussion. There was lack of access to the women farmers to the land rights. So this is one area. Then farm inputs and inequality in the agriculture. So we are seeing कि India में there is feminization of the agriculture. So even therein, when specifically talk about the women farmers' rights, so therein where we witness the inequality in the agricultural sector. So be it even access to formal credit also, or recognition of the land rights and access to farm inputs, they are facing inequality, or they're facing, we can say, discrimination. So we can come up with different policies in order to issue this gap. And herein we are not having like as such specific recommendations to like what can be the steps taken to address the inequality in the agriculture sector. But when we talk about they have less access to formal credit systems, so definitely our steps towards financial inclusion. So therein it can definitely play an important role in today's times, but again, it becomes important that they are not dependent upon the informal sources where again they are charged with high interest rates. So that is one area. Apart from this, we are having again different schemes when you talk about crop insurance schemes also. So even that can help the woman. Apart from this, making available the farm inputs, that's important that they are even made available at the fair prices. So herein also we are having different government schemes running, but still we are seeing that this is a problem. So let's see what were the recommendations that will be suggested out of this conference. So the Nobel Peace Laureate says कि cycles of protest उससे हमें पता चलता है it shows change in Iran is irreversible. So she was first arrested 22 years ago and she spent much of the past 2 decades in and out of jail over her unstinting campaigning for human rights in Iran. So there are again यहाँ पे the possibility कि Russia might pull back from the nuclear test treaty. So there are widespread concerns कि Russia could move to resume the nuclear tests. So again, nuclear threat out of this Russia-Ukraine war is one of the major, you can say, problem areas and challenge. So that's potential concern. So Russian lawmakers, they will consider revoking the ratification of this global nuclear test ban. So nuclear threat is a major concern out of this war that's emerging of late. Coming to the business page. So yesterday there was Monetary Policy Committee's meeting. So RBI flags inflation risk to stability. So as of now, inflation risk is not so high or of so high concern that is again creating so much of problem. So that has been associated as a kind of a stable risk as of now, given the current situation and how the inflation numbers are coming out to be. So MPC leaves the benchmark interest rates unchanged for a fourth straight meeting. And कल हमने ये भी discuss किया था why there were expectations कि repo rate को change नहीं किया जाएगा, status quo would be maintained. So there when we discussed कि जब हम बात करते हैं core inflation की, तो core inflation has been below 6% mark, which has been below the upper tolerance level of the inflation. So that is one of the reasons why we expected that the repo rate would be unchanged this time as well. And food inflation, again, it is a volatile component, so we are monitoring things. Apart from this also, when we talk about food inflation, so that is majorly or most of that the main reason है that is because of supply side disruptions or supply side problems. So changing the repo rate is not directly going to address the supply side issue. It more so addresses the demand side problems. So that is also one of the problems. So herein we see reiterates कि जो real GDP growth है and the retail inflation projections for the fiscal year, they were 6.5% and 5.4% respectively. And RBI governor, he was to ensure कि जो retail price gains हैं, they are tamed to 4%, which is our inflation target. So apart from this, cites uncertainties, including that there is fall in the Kharif sowing of the pulses. So आने वाले time में we might see the pulses price and the oilseeds prices going up. There is low reservoir levels is clouding inflation outlook. So terms declining core inflation So core inflation में हम food inflation, fuel prices include नहीं करते हैं. So that is the silver lining that we are seeing core inflation is cooling down. Then MPC raises its headline retail inflation projection for the second quarter ended September 30 by 20 basis points to 6.4%. So MPC, it's alert and ready to act. So asserting ki MPC, it remained alert and prepared to undertake timely policy measures so as to align inflation to the target and anchor the inflation expectations. He observed key headwinds from the geopolitical tensions. So inflation ka again jo reason bhi hai, they are external, they are not domestic reasons. So geopolitical reasons again because of the Russia-Ukraine war, that is one of the main reasons, and then geo-economic fragmentation, volatility in the global financial markets, global economic slowdown, and uneven distributions of monsoon rains. They posed risk to the inflation in India. And when we talk about centers' financial health, so even that remains stable and that is not a cause of concern as of now. So that is one update. When we talk about a fiscal deficit target, so we have already hit 30% of the annual target. So RBI, it also proposes anonymizing the card details at the bank level. So to further secure online transactions, the RBI ने इस चीज को suggest कि it is proposed to allow the banks to tokenize the debit or the credit card so that जो information है that remains in an anonymous manners with the bank and there is no possibility of even misusage of your financial details as well. So observing the card on file tokenization, which anonymizes the card details that so far been offered at the merchant sites. So definitely this is under works and it has been implemented in phased manner. So basically, suppose if you're using Paytm, so you can and आप कोई payment कर रहे हो using your credit or debit card, तो आपके जो details हैं आप उसको anonymize कर सकते हो and you can basically आने वाले time में when you will be making another transaction, so you will not require the actual details of your credit card or debit card. So you're basically tokenizing your card details. Then we also have US data. So US job growth surges in the month of September, hints at more Fed tightening ahead. So we might expect again US Fed, jo USA ka central bank hai, they might increase their interest rates. So the labor market remains strong in US, enough for the Fed Reserve to raise the interest rates. So again, this is one of the major concerns. Again we can say जो again interest rate gap भी increase हो रहा है between the India's repo rate and the interest rates of the US. So वो एक interest rate differential जो हम term use करते हैं that lies more in favor of US, जिसकी वजह से again we might expect more FPIs withdrawing and exiting from the Indian market, जिसकी वजह से again Indian rupee के ऊपर pressure और increase हो सकता है. Indian rupee can depreciate more. So that is again another problem area that is associated and connected with this. Now we come to Financial Express newspaper. So here and also we are having these details about the MPC decision. So repo rate stands unchanged in hawkish monetary policy. So even the stance remains hawkish. RBI mulls the bond sale to soak up the extra cash which is there, and government bond yields that also surges. So government bond yield surging is not again a good sign. So RBI walls the open market operations googly. So herein we say RBI's governor's words, he says that I would like to emphatically reiterate कि जो हमारा inflation target है that is 4% and not 2 to 6%. So वो एक target range है. So exact target inflation is 4%. So it is a turning pitch and we will play our shots carefully. So these are his words. Everything that RBI governor, he said in first part of his monetary policy statement was on expected line. So कोई repo rate change नहीं किया गया, continuing the withdrawal of accommodation stance, and there's no change in inflation and growth projections as well. So surprise for the markets came in much later in the speech when he said कि Apex Bank it plans active liquidity management through open market operations to soak up excess funds from the banking system so that again we are able to bring down inflation, because अगर ज़्यादा liquidity ज़्यादा money supply में रहेगा, so that would again fuel up inflation. So the timing and quantum of such operations that will depend upon evolving liquidity conditions. So जैसे जैसे liquidity conditions change होगी accordingly decisions लिए जाएगा कितना amount would be withdrawn. So that stumped the bond market, leading to a sharp spike in the yields. So it's a turning pitch, and he said, I would like to play my shots very carefully. So RBI, it has been selling bonds in the open market recently, albeit in small amounts to soak up the excess liquidity. So this has been one of the measures how, again, RBI can soak up excess liquidity in the market by selling bonds. And so this has been made clear कि open market sales की जाएंगी via auction process, and this move is not aimed at soaking up expected inflows from the JP Morgan's inclusion of India in its emerging market debt index. So this is not linked to this, and governor said कि while declining core inflation वो हमारे लिए silver lining is, so this is one of the major, because one of the major positives that we have right now in our favor. And this we have already seen कि जो inflation हो रही है, that is because of the external factors that we have specifically addressed. 10-year government bond yield stands at 7.34%. So anti-dumping duty अगर हम बात करें होती क्या है, ये कैसे function करती है, तो suppose in this case also it has been imposed against Chinese goods. So Chinese wheel loaders के import के against we are seeing कि anti-dumping duty up to 82% likely would be imposed on them. So anti-dumping duty imposed की जाती है when it is seen कि suppose China is exporting a good to India at a price जो China की domestic market price से भी lower है, तो इसलिए इसको बोला जाता है कि China or any country it is dumping that particular good in India, उसको dump कर रहे इतने lower prices पे भी कि उनके domestic market prices से भी lower price है. So that is definitely going to hurt the interest of our domestic producers as well. So that is why हम anti-dumping duty impose कर देते हैं on import of such goods. So gender issues, gender inequality in agri-food systems is already addressed. Feminization of agriculture, we are seeing there is inequality when it comes to access to formal credit or getting agricultural inputs. So again, we are having this dedicated article for the MPC. So India's liquidity conditions and overnight rates. So liquidity surplus, this is the blue colored area. So we are having less of liquidity surplus now. You can see that during January 2022, there was so much of liquidity surplus that existed in the market. And the call rate, and apart from this, repo rate is at 6.5% right now. And the call rate is somewhere around, let's say, near 10%. Sorry, it's near 6.75%. So even जो अभी recently we were discussing open market operations announce किए जाएंगे accordingly by the RBI as per the changing liquidity conditions. We're taking up Indian Express newspaper now. So we're just going to take up the topics that we've now taken up so far. So Philippines protests after China Coast Guard ship nearly collides with their vessel. So alarming proximity, they were at merely 1 meters of distance. So this we have again seen the 9-line, China's growing assertiveness, China's again construction of the artificial islands, and the so-called claims of China around the 9-line, which violates again, we can say the maritime sovereignty of different countries and also leads to violation of their exclusive economic zone rights as well. So GRAP stage 1 kicks in as we see Delhi mein air quality dips to poor condition. And what is GRAP? So pollution measures they kick in. So under stage 1, air quality index, it is 4, that is it is between the range of 201 and 300. So measures jo ab liye jayenge under this GRAP, that is one would be stopping all the construction and demolition activities with a plot size of 500 square meters or more. Then second would be enforcing the guidelines on use of anti-smog guns at the construction sites. Third would be mechanized sweeping, water sprinkling ki jayegi, enforcing ban on the open burning of the waste, and the pollution under control norms for the vehicles need to be implemented. Discoms to minimize the power supply interruptions in NCR, ensure that the diesel generator sets that they're not used as a regular source of power. Then we need to encourage officers to start unified communication for the employees. Again, we are talking about carpooling or using more of public transportation, and enforce complete ban on coal or firewood in tandoors in restaurants and open eateries. So these are some of the measures. Now सबसे ज्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट चीज इसमें ये है कि इसको इम्प्लीमेंट कितने हद तक इसको इम्प्लीमेंट किया जाएगा रियल ग्राउंड सिचुएशन पे. सो दैट इज गोइंग टू मेक द एंटायर डिफरेंस. एंड लॉन्ग टर्म ये हो गया एक शॉर्ट टर्म मेजर. तो लॉन्ग टर्म मेजर की बात करते हैं तो वी नीड टू इंश्योर कि इवन जब एयर क्वालिटी इज इन गुड हेल्थ then also we are sticking to all these measures so that longer time perspective में air quality condition improves. And it is not कि जब air quality खराब होती है then only these measures are enforced. So citizen charter की अगर हम बात करें, it keep the engines of the vehicles properly tuned, maintain proper tire pressure in your vehicles, keep your PUC certificates up to date, and turn off the engine at the red lights. So कुछ simple measures हैं जिनकी वजह से again we can have a huge impact. So Supreme Court to Bihar government ki why did you publish the caste survey data, refuses to interfere for right now time being, but says will examine if the state is competent if the state is competent to hold a survey or not. So Supreme Court is going to take up this matter. We already saw कि Patna High Court ने इस चीज को already लिया था. Initially there was a stay ordered कि आप survey या census नहीं कर सकते, state government specifically, but then it was being said कि finally जो outcome था from the Patna High Court ruling कि state can go ahead with a survey but not definitely census. So left-wing extremism, it is an important topic when we talk about internal security that will be uprooted in the next 2 years. This is what has been alleged and assumed by a Union Home Minister. And this is the target that it was set, that next 2 years may left-wing extremism will be completely uprooted from the Indian soil. So he said that there is an important need for constant surveillance in the areas which have been freed from the Naxals, so that again, definitely they're not able to revive in those areas. Apart from this, with the determination, the Prime Minister, the cooperation of all the states who've been affected by LWE, major success we have seen that we have achieved against this in 2022 and 23. And security related expenditure increase kiya gaya, that has been more than doubled in comparison to the earlier period. Security related expenditure. So there has been a decline of more than 52% in LWE related violence, 69% in deaths, 72% in security forces deaths, and 68% in civilian deaths between 2014 and 2023 compared to the period from 2005 to 2014. So we have seen a massive decline. So banks have been cautioned, banks have been cautioned by RBI on high growth in the personal loans. So they've been told to step up the scrutiny. Again, they're disbursing the specifically personal loans because personal loans में the chances of default is high. So because personal loans में growth बहुत ज़्यादा हो रही है, देखने को मिल रही है, so they've been again cautioned कि आपको proper scrutiny karna before finally going ahead with the personal loans is important. And that is 23% growth in the unsecured retail credit. That is an outlier. So strengthen your internal surveillance mechanisms. So this has been highlighted by the RBI's Deputy Governor, J. Swaminathan. So this is one thing. So why has RBI retained its withdrawal stance? So RBI is focused on its stance of withdrawal of accommodation until jitne bhi risk hai related to inflation they dissipate. So an accommodative stance means ki central bank, it is prepared to expand the money supply to boost the economic growth. So this is basically what does the accommodative stance implies. So we are seeing withdrawal of the accommodative stance. So that is again because of the concern that is related to inflation. So withdrawal of accommodation, it will mean reducing money supply in the system, which will rein in inflation further. So iski wajah se hi again we are seeing ki jo bond yields hai, they have spiked. So risk kya hai? Risk, jo major risk hai, that is macroeconomic stability and sustainable growth. High inflation is a major risk to these two things, and retail inflation has eased to 6.83% in August, and it continues to be above RBI's again comfort zone of 2 to 6%. So it's important to ensure that even retail inflation, once that comes under this territory and it comes more closer toward its target level of 4%, then we can say that we are in a comfortable situation as far as inflation is concerned. So what did RBI governor he has to say on different things? So rupees 2000 notes की अगर हम बात करें, so after 7th of October he said कि it can be exchanged or deposited at 19 RBI issue offices in the state capitals. So उसके बाद भी आप उसको exchange या deposit कर सकते हो RBI के issue offices में, and there is a facility of sending through the postal department also. So we have so far got back around rupees 3.43 lakh crores, and only about VC के अभी जो system में circulation में है, that is rupees 12,000 crores that is still in circulation. So of the amount we got back, 87% it has been deposited with the banks, and जो बाकी सारा है that has been exchanged to other denomination notes. So bulk of rupees 2000 notes, they have come back, and so it is largely met the original objective. So just point of time पे again rupees 2000 notes announced किए गए थे, that was to address जो liquidity problem थी. So that was the main motive. So उस time पे it was clear कि they are not going to be there for, again, they are not going to be in circulation permanently. So ये किसी तरीके का demonetization नहीं हुआ है. So that is important to understand. So remittances, they are quite robust. Temporarily, we are seeing कि it may happen कि fall in remittances देखने को मिल रहा है, but data shows कि they are holding comparable to last year. And US Treasury yields की अगर हम बात करें तो जो हमारी domestic bond yields हैं, they are reacting to factors like the bond yields जो USA में advanced economies में grow कर रही है, increase हो रही है. So हमारी जो bond yields हैं, they are determined primarily by the domestic factors as it stands today, but जो bond yields here, they are going up, especially USA में, that does normally lead to even currency depreciation in the emerging economies like India. So I've already explained you this link, but the difference in the context of India is our forex reserves, they are sizable. And second, we do intervene to maintain even the currency stability. So if suppose Indian rupee depreciates, so herein RBI intervenes in the market by ensuring कि वो एक certain limit तक ही हो, and that is it does not remain a continuous process, because अगर Indian rupee depreciate होता है तो हमारे imports और ज़्यादा expensive हो जाते हैं, जिसकी वजह से inflation और fuel हो सकती है. तो things are interconnected. Specifically अगर हम inflation की बात करें तो it's important to even take into consideration multiple things at the same time. So that's all for the day. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope all the topics that we took up today and tried to understand, you're clear with them. So do subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for further updates.